The morning mist clung to the training grounds of Nexus Station like a shroud. The artificial atmosphere generators working overtime to maintain Earth-normal conditions for the diverse species now calling this place home. Lieutenant Marcus Chen adjusted his standard-issue Alliance uniform as he made his way across the compound, his combat boots echoing against the metallic walkways that connected the various training facilities. 6 months had passed since the Galactic Accord had been signed, bringing together 12 different species in an unprecedented alliance against the encroaching void spawn threat. Nexus Station served as the primary training facility where warriors from across known space learned to fight alongside each other, sharing tactics and forging bonds that would be crucial in the battles ahead. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Marcus had drawn morning inspection duty for the Catharian training wing, a responsibility he had volunteered for despite the warnings from his fellow humans. The Catharians were notorious throughout the galaxy for their warrior culture, their strict codes of honor, and their particular sensitivity to what they perceived as slights or challenges. They were also, Marcus had to admit, absolutely fascinating to observe. The Catharian section of the base was a marvel of architectural efficiency combined with aesthetic beauty. Crystalline spires rose from reinforced foundations, their surfaces catching and refracting the artificial sunlight in patterns that somehow managed to be both alien and oddly comforting. Training equipment that looked more like art installations than weapons filled carefully maintained courtyards, while holographic displays showed complex battle formations that seemed to dance in mid-air. As Marcus approached the central courtyard, he could see the Catharian warriors beginning their morning routines. Their movements were precise, almost ritualistic, as they prepared their weapons and armor with the kind of reverence that spoke of centuries-old tradition. The males of the species were impressive enough, tall, lean, with skin that held a subtle, iridescent quality that shifted between deep purple and midnight blue depending on the angle of observation. Their cranial ridges gave them an otherworldly nobility, while their natural agility made even simple movements look like carefully choreographed performances. But it was the females that truly commanded attention. Catharian women were warriors in the truest sense, their society placing them in positions of combat leadership that most other species reserved for males. They were taller than their male counterparts, their builds more muscular while maintaining an elegant grace that seemed to defy physics. Their skin held brighter hues, deep crimsons, royal purples, and occasionally the rare silver white that marked the highest nobility. Most striking of all were their eyes, which seemed to glow with an inner fire that spoke of intelligence, pride, and a barely contained readiness for violence. Marcus had been warned that Catharian females were particularly sensitive to perceived challenges to their authority or combat prowess. The briefing materials had stressed the importance of maintaining proper protocol when interacting with them, avoiding any gestures or phrases that might be construed as aggressive or dismissive. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, like this video, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story, which was why what happened next would later be remembered as either the most unfortunate cultural misunderstanding in Alliance history, or the most fortuitous accident that ever befell human-alien relations. The courtyard held perhaps 30 Catharian warriors, split roughly evenly between male and female. They moved through their morning preparations with the kind of synchronized precision that spoke of long practice together. Marcus made his way along the designated inspection path, checking off items on his tablet as he observed their weapon maintenance, equipment readiness, and general facility condition. Everything was proceeding normally until he rounded the corner of the main training platform and nearly collided with the most magnificent being he had ever encountered. She stood nearly 7 feet tall, her crimson skin seeming to glow in the morning light. Her armor was a masterwork of Catharian craftsmanship, form-fitting plates that protected vital areas while allowing for maximum mobility, decorated with intricate engravings that told stories of battles fought and victories won. Her weapons, a pair of curved energy blades that hummed with barely contained power, hung at her sides with casual readiness. But it was her face that stopped Marcus cold, angular features that managed to be both fierce and beautiful, eyes like molten gold that seemed to see straight through him, and an expression of such regal authority that he felt momentarily stunned that she was clearly one of the high-ranking warriors, possibly even nobility based on the silver threading in her armor, and the respectful distance the other Catharians maintained around her. Marcus realized he was staring and quickly tried to recover his composure, falling back on the basic diplomatic protocols he had been taught. The problem was, in his flustered state, he defaulted to the most basic human greeting he knew. "Good morning," he said, offering what he hoped was a respectful nod. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Every Catharian in the courtyard stopped what they were doing. The subtle hum of energy weapons died away as power cells were hastily deactivated. Conversations ceased mid-sentence. Even the holographic displays seemed to flicker and dim as if the very technology was holding its breath. The female warrior's golden eyes widened, then narrowed dangerously. Her hand moved unconsciously toward one of her blade hilts, stopping just short of drawing the weapon. Around the courtyard, Marcus could see other Catharians exchanging glances that ranged from shocked to excited to deeply concerned. She said, her voice carrying a melodic quality that somehow made it even more menacing. "Dare to offer me the greeting of equals?" Marcus felt his stomach drop. In the 6 months he had been stationed here, he had never heard of any greeting of equals, and the way she said it made it clear that this was not a good thing. What? He managed, his diplomatic training warring with his growing panic. "I was just saying good morning." "It's a standard human greeting, nothing more." The warrior princess, for that's clearly what she was, Marcus realized with growing horror, drew herself up to her full, imposing height. "Nothing more?" The incredulity in her voice carried across the suddenly silent courtyard. "You address me, Princess Zarathik of the Crimson Spire, First Blade of the Eastern Reaches, Slayer of the Void Drake Korthik, as though we are equals in combat?" No, that's not," Marcus started, but she cut him off with a gesture that somehow managed to be both elegant and threatening. "Among my people, the greeting of equals is reserved for those who have proven themselves worthy to stand as combat peers. It is a challenge human, a declaration that you consider yourself capable of matching my skill in battle." Around the courtyard, the other Catharians had begun to form a loose circle, their excitement palpable. Marcus could see several of them activating what looked like recording devices, clearly anticipating something worth documenting. "Princess Zarathik," Marcus said, trying to inject as much respect and deference into his voice as possible. "I assure you, I meant no challenge. Human greetings don't carry the same meaning as yours. I was simply being polite." The princess tilted her head, studying him with those unsettling golden eyes. "Polite," she repeated, as if tasting the word. "You claim your greeting was merely politeness?" "Yes, exactly. Just a friendly greeting between colleagues." Something in her expression shifted, and Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. If he had thought her dangerous before, the look she was giving him now was absolutely predatory. "Colleagues," she said softly. "You consider us colleagues." The way she said it made Marcus suspect he had somehow made things worse, though he couldn't understand how. Around them, the circle of Catharian warriors was growing larger as more arrived to see what was happening. Several of the males looked deeply uncomfortable, while the females seemed to be practically vibrating with anticipation. "Among humans," Marcus tried again. "Colleagues are people who work together, partners, allies." I was acknowledging our shared mission here at Nexus Station. Princess Zarathik was quiet for a long moment, her golden eyes never leaving his face. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a tone that sent shivers through every being in the courtyard. "Shared mission," she repeated. "Partners. Allies." She paused, and Marcus could almost see the gears turning in her mind. "Tell me, human, in your culture, do partners not prove their worth to one another?" "Well, yes, but through cooperation and combat," she interrupted, her hand once again moving toward her weapon. "Proving one's worth through combat. The only true measure of a warrior's value." Marcus was beginning to understand that this conversation was spiraling rapidly out of his control. "Princess, I think there's been a misunderstanding. No misunderstanding," she said, her voice carrying a note of finality that made his blood run cold. "You have issued the greeting of equals, claiming partnership with the Crimson Spire. By the ancient laws of my people, this claim must be validated." She drew one of her energy blades in a movement so fluid it seemed like liquid mercury. The weapon hummed to life, casting dancing red light across her already crimson features. Around the courtyard, every Catharian warrior straightened to attention. "Princess Zara Thick of the Crimson Spire, do hereby issue formal challenge to all females of your species represented on this station. Let them come forward and prove their worth in combat, that I might judge whether humanity is truly worthy of partnership with the Catharian Empire." The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus felt his mouth go dry as the implications of what she had just said sank in. She wasn't just challenging him, she was challenging every human woman on Nexus Station to single combat. "Princess," he said desperately, "that's not necessary. I can apologize for the misunderstanding. The challenge is issued," she said, her blade singing as she moved it in a complex pattern that looked both beautiful and deadly. "Honor demands satisfaction. Your females have one solar cycle to present themselves for combat. Those who refuse will be marked as cowards, and humanity's petition for partnership will be rejected." One of the male Catharians stepped forward, his expression troubled. "Princess, perhaps the human speaks truth about their customs. To challenge an entire species over a cultural misunderstanding. Zara Thick's golden eyes fixed on him with such intensity that he actually took a step back. "Are you questioning my judgment, Veltar?" "Never, Princess," he replied quickly. "I merely suggest that the challenge stands," she said, her voice carrying absolute authority. "Let the humans prove their worth, or admit their inferiority." Marcus watched in growing horror as the other Catharians began to disperse, clearly intent on spreading word of what had just happened. Within minutes, every being on Nexus Station would know that Princess Zara Thick had issued a formal combat challenge to all human females over what she perceived as a slight to her honor. He pulled out his communicator with shaking hands, knowing he had to warn the command staff about what was coming. But as he did, he caught sight of the princess still standing in the center of the courtyard, her energy blade casting crimson light across her features as she began what looked like a formal combat meditation. Even in his panic, Marcus couldn't help but admire the deadly grace with which she moved. Every gesture was precise, controlled, beautiful in its lethality. She was, without question, the most formidable warrior he had ever encountered, and he had just accidentally goaded her into challenging every woman on the station to prove their worth in combat. His communicator crackled to life as he activated it. "Command, this is Lieutenant Chen. We have a situation in the Catharian wing. Go ahead, Chen," came the voice of Commander Sarah Hayes, the station's senior officer, and Marcus realized with growing dread, the first person who would likely have to face the princess in combat. I think I may have accidentally started an interspecies incident." There was a pause. "Define incident." Lieutenant Marcus watched as Princess Zara Thick completed her meditation and began what looked like a more aggressive combat form, her blade work becoming increasingly complex and deadly. Around the courtyard, Other Catharian warriors had begun their own preparations, clearly anticipating the combats to come. "Well, ma'am," Marcus said, wondering how he was going to explain this, "it appears I've inadvertently challenged the honor of a Catharian princess, and she's now demanding that every human woman on the station face her in single combat to prove our species' worthiness for alliance." The silence on the other end of the communicator stretched for so long that Marcus began to wonder if the connection had been lost. When Commander Hayes finally spoke, her voice was carefully controlled. "Lieutenant Chen, please report to my office immediately, and bring every piece of documentation you can find on Catharian cultural protocols." "Yes, ma'am," Marcus replied, but he couldn't tear his eyes away from the princess as she continued her deadly dance. Even knowing that she represented a potentially catastrophic diplomatic crisis, he found himself mesmerized by her lethal beauty. As if sensing his gaze, Princess Zara Thek suddenly stopped her combat forms and looked directly at him. For a moment, their eyes met across the courtyard, and Marcus felt something pass between them. A recognition of some kind, though he couldn't quite identify what. Then she smiled, and Marcus felt his breath catch. It wasn't a cruel smile, despite the deadly challenge she had just issued. Instead, it held a note of genuine intrigue, as if she found his predicament amusing rather than threatening. "One solar cycle. Human," she called across the courtyard, her melodic voice carrying easily through the morning air. "Let your females prove their courage, or admit that your species lacks the warrior spirit necessary for true partnership." With that, she sheathed her blade and strode from the courtyard, her entourage of warriors following in her wake. Marcus stood alone in the suddenly empty space, the weight of what had just happened settling over him like a crushing burden. He had 24 hours to figure out how to explain to the human command staff that their newest and most powerful ally now considered them potential enemies, all because he had said good morning to the wrong person at the wrong time in the wrong way. As he made his way toward the command center, Marcus couldn't shake the image of Princess Zara Thek's smile from his mind. There had been something in her expression, something that suggested this was more than just wounded pride or cultural misunderstanding. She had looked interested, as if his accidental challenge had presented her with an opportunity she hadn't expected but was eager to explore. The question was, an opportunity for what? Commander Sarah Hayes stared at the holographic display floating above her desk, the three-dimensional representation of Princess Zara Thek rotating slowly as she studied every detail of the Catharian warrior's combat specifications. The data was impressive and terrifying in equal measure. 7 feet of perfectly conditioned muscle, reflexes that tested at nearly superhuman levels, and a combat record that read like something out of a military legend. Slayer of the Void Drake. Korthek, she read aloud, her voice carefully neutral despite the growing knot in her stomach. Single-handedly eliminated a Ravager-class battlecruiser using only personal weapons. Undefeated in over 300 formal combat challenges. She looked up at Lieutenant Chen, who stood at attention before her desk, looking like he wanted to disappear into the floor. "And you said good morning to her?" "Yes, ma'am," Marcus replied miserably. "I thought I was being polite." Dr. Elena Vasquez, the station's xenobiology specialist, shifted in her chair as she consulted her own data pad. "According to the cultural briefings I've been reviewing, the greeting of equals, Marcus, accidentally used as one of the most significant social protocols in Catharian society. It's essentially a formal declaration that you consider yourself a peer in combat prowess." "But I didn't know that," Marcus protested. "I've been doing morning inspections for 6 months without incident, because you've been dealing with the male warriors," Dr. Vasquez explained. "Catharian males are more flexible in their interpretation of social protocols. The females, especially those of royal blood, adhere to the ancient codes much more strictly." Commander Hayes rubbed her temples, feeling a headache building. "So what exactly are we dealing with here?" What does this formal challenge actually entail? The door to her office chimed, and she looked up to see Ambassador Tucker, the Catharian diplomatic representative, entering with the fluid grace characteristic of his species. His usually composed demeanor showed signs of strain, his iridescent skin flickering between colors in what she had learned indicated stress. "Commander Hayes," he said, his voice carrying the melodic quality that made even bad news sound like music. "I have come to discuss the situation that has developed. Please, Ambassador, have a seat." Hayes gestured to one of the specially designed chairs that accommodated the Catharian physiology. "We were just trying to understand exactly what Princess Zara Thick has demanded." Tucker settled into the chair with obvious reluctance. "I am afraid the situation is quite serious, Commander. Princess Zara Thick has invoked the right of martial validation, one of our most ancient and sacred traditions." Dr. Vasquez leaned forward, her scientific curiosity overriding the gravity of the situation. "Can you explain what that entails, exactly?" "When one warrior issues the greeting of equals to another, it implies a claim of partnership or alliance between their respective groups," Tucker explained. "If that greeting is accepted, and the princess interpreted Lieutenant Chun's response as acceptance, then the claiming party must prove their worthiness through combat." "But I didn't accept anything," Marcus interjected. "I just said it was a standard human greeting, which, in our cultural context, amounts to the same thing," Tucker replied with what might have been sympathy. "You see, the princess now believes that humanity, through you as its representative, has claimed partnership with the Crimson Spire, one of the most prestigious warrior houses in our empire." Commander Hayes felt the pieces clicking into place with horrible clarity. "And she's demanding that our women prove we're worthy of that partnership through combat." "Precisely. According to the rite, all females of the claiming species must demonstrate their warrior prowess. Those who refuse are considered to have brought dishonor upon their people, invalidating any claim to partnership." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Finally, Dr. Vasquez spoke up. "What happens if our people refuse to participate?" Tucker's skin shifted to deeper, more somber hues. "The Catharian Empire would consider humanity unworthy of alliance. All cooperation agreements would be void, trade relationships terminated," and he paused, clearly reluctant to continue. And Hayes prompted, "And the princess would be honor-bound to issue a formal declaration of contempt against your species. Given her status, this would likely influence other warrior houses to adopt similar positions." Hayes stood up abruptly, beginning to pace behind her desk. "So our options are to send our female personnel into combat against a 7-foot killing machine, or lose one of our most crucial allies in the war against the Void Spawn. I'm afraid that summarizes the situation accurately." Tucker confirmed. Marcus looked stricken. "Commander, this is my fault. Maybe if I challenge her myself. Absolutely not," Tucker interrupted. "The rite specifically demands female combatants. In Catharian society, warrior women hold a position of such esteem that only other women are considered capable of validating their strength. A male challenge would be seen as an even greater insult." Hayes stopped pacing and turned to face the group. "How many women do we have on station?" Dr. Vasquez consulted her datapad. 47, including civilian contractors and support staff. "But Commander, surely we're not actually considering ... I single quotes considering all our options." Hayes cut her off. "Ambassador, what exactly does the combat entail? Are we talking about fights to the death?" No, Tucker said quickly. "The rite of martial validation is typically conducted until first blood or clear defeat. Death is not the goal, proving worthiness is. First blood against a warrior who's never been defeated." Hayes muttered, "Wonderful." The door chimed again, and this time it was Lieutenant Commander Jessica Park, the station's head of security, who entered. Her expression was grim as she took in the assembled group. "Commander, I've been monitoring communications from the Catharian wing. Word of the challenge has spread through their entire population here. They're excited. Excited how?" Hayes asked. Though she suspected she didn't want to know, they're setting up what looks like an arena in their main courtyard. And there's been a significant increase in interspecies communication traffic. I think other alien species on the station are hearing about this. As if summoned by her words, Hayes' communicator burst to life with incoming messages. She glanced at the display and groaned. Representatives from the Zentharan Trade Federation, the Alkari Military Council, and the Vrillik Collective all requesting immediate meetings. "They're going to want to observe," Tucker said quietly. "News of a right of martial validation involving humans will spread quickly through diplomatic channels. This could become quite public." Hayes slumped back into her chair. "So now we have an audience. Perfect." She looked around the room at the assembled faces, seeing her own stress reflected in their expressions. "All right, people. We need to approach this systematically. Dr. Vasquez, I need you to compile everything we know about Catharian combat techniques, physiology, anything that might give our people an edge." "Commander," Dr. Vasquez said hesitantly, "I have to ask, are you seriously considering sending our people to fight her?" Hayes was quiet for a long moment, weighing impossible choices. "Jessica, what's your professional assessment? Could any of our people actually stand a chance against her?" Lieutenant Commander Park consulted her own datapad before answering. "I've reviewed the combat footage from her previous engagements. Her reach advantage alone would be decisive against most opponents, and her speed." She shook her head. "Commander, I'm not sure any human could match her in single combat, but you said any human, has noted. That implies some could come closer than others. Well, yes. Lieutenant Sarah Rodriguez from the Marine Detachment has extensive martial arts training. Corporal Kim Soto from Engineering has competitive fighting experience. Dr. Mei Chun from the medical staff actually holds black belts in 3 different combat disciplines." Park paused. "But Commander, even our best would be facing significant disadvantages." Tucker cleared his throat delicately. "If I may, Commander, there's something else you should know about Princess Zara THEK. Hayes looked at him warily. "What now?" "She is not just any Catharian noble. She is, how would you put it, something of a celebrity among the warrior caste. Her combat prowess is legendary, yes, but she is also known for her intelligence and, shall we say, unconventional approaches to problem-solving. Meaning what, exactly?" "Meaning that while she has never been defeated in formal combat, she has also never seriously injured an opponent when it could be avoided. She takes no pleasure in causing unnecessary harm." Dr. Vasquez looked up from her datapad. "Are you suggesting she might go easy on our people?" "Quite the opposite," Tucker replied. "I'm suggesting that she might be testing something beyond simple combat prowess. Princess Zarathik is known for her strategic mind. This challenge may be about more than just proving worthiness." Marcus, who had been silent during most of the discussion, suddenly spoke up. "Ambassador, when she issued the challenge, she looked, I don't know how to describe it. Not angry, exactly. More like she was curious about something." Dakota's skin shifted to lighter, more thoughtful hues. "Curious? That is interesting. Tell me, Lieutenant, did she seem surprised by your accidental challenge?" "Actually, no. If anything, she seemed almost pleased by it. Like I'd given her an opportunity she'd been waiting for." Hayes watched the exchange with growing interest. "Ambassador, is there something we're missing here? Some larger context we should understand?" Tucker was quiet for a long moment, his skin cycling through several color patterns that Hayes had learned indicated deep thought. Finally, he spoke. "Princess Zarathek has been advocating for closer cooperation between our species for some time. She believes that humans possess certain qualities that could complement Catharian warrior culture. However, her views are not universally shared among our people. What kind of qualities? Dr. Vasquez asked. Adaptability, innovation, the ability to find unconventional solutions to complex problems. Tucker's gaze settled on Marcus. Your accidental challenge may have provided her with the perfect opportunity to demonstrate these qualities. To her own people, Hayes felt pieces of a larger puzzle starting to come together. You think she's using this challenge to prove a point about human capabilities? It is possible. Princess Zarathik is not just a warrior, she is a politician. If she can demonstrate that humans possess warrior spirit worthy of respect, even among our females, it would significantly strengthen her position in advocating for alliance, but that still means our people have to actually fight her, Park pointed out. Yes, Tucker agreed. But perhaps not in the way you might expect. Hayes leaned forward. Explain. Princess Zarathik values courage, ingenuity, and determination above raw combat skill. She might be more interested in seeing how your people approach an impossible challenge than in simply defeating them. The room fell silent as everyone processed this information. Finally, Hayes spoke. All right. Here's what we're going to do. Jessica, I want you to reach out to every woman on this station. Explain the situation honestly. What we're facing, what the stakes are, and what we know about Princess Zarathik. Make it clear that participation is voluntary. Commander, Park said carefully. What if no one volunteers? Hayes smiled grimly. Then I guess I'll be fighting her myself. But I have a feeling we're about to discover something about human women that might surprise everyone involved. As the meeting broke up and people began filing out to their various tasks, Marcus lingered behind. Commander, I want to apologize again for ... Hayes held up a hand to stop him. Lieutenant, something tells me you may have accidentally done something very important here. Let's see how this plays out before you start beating yourself up. After he left, Hayes stood alone in her office, staring out the viewport at the distant stars. Somewhere out there, the void spawn continued their relentless advance toward inhabited space. The alliance between species was crucial to stopping them, and now that alliance hung in the balance because one of her officers had been polite to the wrong person. But as she thought about what Ambassador Tucker had said about Princess Zarathik's true motivations, Hayes began to wonder if this crisis might actually be an opportunity in disguise. If the princess really was looking for a way to demonstrate human worthiness, then maybe, just maybe, they could give her exactly what she was looking for. The question was, did the women of Nexus Station have what it would take to impress a warrior? Princess who had never known defeat. Hayes suspected they were all about to find out. The arena that had materialized in the Catharian courtyard overnight was a marvel of alien engineering. Crystalline barriers rose in perfect geometric patterns, creating an enclosed combat space that somehow managed to amplify sound while providing optimal viewing angles for spectators. Energy field generators hummed at strategic points, ready to intervene if the combat moved beyond acceptable parameters. Commander Sarah Hayes stood at the edge of what had become an impromptu diplomatic gathering, watching as representatives from a dozen different species took their positions around the arena. What had started as a simple cultural misunderstanding had evolved into something approaching a galactic event. Word had spread through the Alliance networks with remarkable speed, and now military attaches, trade representatives, and cultural observers from across known space had arrived to witness humanity's trial by combat. Nervous? Lieutenant Commander, Jessica Park asked, taking position beside her commander. Hayes glanced down at her own modified combat gear, specially adjusted for mobility and equipped with every defensive enhancement they could manage without violating the challenge protocols. Terrified, she admitted, but also curious. The previous day had brought revelations that changed everything about how they approached the challenge. When Hayes had put out the call for volunteers, the response had been immediate and overwhelming. Every single woman on Nexus Station had stepped forward, from combat veterans to civilian engineers to medical staff, who had never held a weapon in anger. But it was Dr. Mei Chun, the station's chief medical officer, who had provided the crucial insight that reframed their entire strategy. "I've been studying the combat footage," she had told the assembled volunteers during their planning session. "Princess Zarathik isn't just fighting, she's teaching. Every engagement follows a pattern designed to test specific qualities rather than simply overwhelm her opponent." Lieutenant Sarah Rodriguez, whose martial arts background made her the obvious first choice for combat, had nodded in agreement. "She's looking for something specific. The question is what now?" As Princess Zarathik emerged from the crystalline entrance to the arena, Hayes felt her breath catch despite herself. The Catharian warrior moved with liquid grace, her crimson skin seeming to glow in the arena's lighting. She wore ceremonial combat armor that was both functional and beautiful, its surfaces inscribed with glyphs that told the story of her victories. Her energy blades remained sheathed, but her golden eyes surveyed the assembled crowd with obvious satisfaction. "Warriors of humanity," she called out, her melodic voice carrying easily through the arena. "I greet you in the spirit of honorable combat. Today we discover whether your species possesses the strength of spirit necessary for true alliance with the Catharian Empire." Ambassador Tucker stepped forward, his role as ceremonial overseer requiring him to formally announce the proceedings. "Let it be known that Princess Zarathik of the Crimson Spire has issued the right of martial validation to the human females of Nexus Station. Combat will continue until worthiness is proven, or the challenge is withdrawn." Hayes watched as Lieutenant Rodriguez entered the arena, her movements confident, despite the obvious size and reach disadvantage she faced. The young Marine had volunteered to go first, arguing that her extensive combat training made her the logical choice to test the waters. What followed was a masterclass in controlled combat that left the entire assembly speechless. Princess Zarathik fought with her energy blades deactivated, using them essentially as training weapons, while Rodriguez employed a combination of martial arts techniques and tactical improvisation that drew appreciative murmurs from the alien observers. The princess didn't simply defeat her opponent, she guided the combat, creating scenarios that forced Rodriguez to demonstrate creativity, determination, and tactical thinking under pressure. When Rodriguez finally yielded, breathing hard but uninjured except for minor bruises, Princess Zarathik offered her a formal warrior salute that sent ripples of surprise through the Catharian observers. "You fight with honor and intelligence," the princess announced. "You adapt to changing circumstances and refuse to yield when victory seems impossible. These are the qualities of a true warrior." But she didn't declare the challenge satisfied. Instead, she turned to face the assembled humans with an expression of genuine curiosity. "Who comes next?" What followed over the next several hours challenged every assumption about combat, species interaction, and the nature of courage itself. Corporal Kim Sato, the engineer, approached the challenge like a technical problem. She had modified her equipment within the bounds of the protocols, creating improvised defensive tools that turned the arena itself into an ally. When Princess Zarathik adapted to counter these innovations, Sato adapted in turn, creating a flowing exchange that was part combat, part engineering demonstration. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the xenobiology specialist, surprised everyone by requesting permission to fight with scientific instruments instead of traditional weapons. Her deep understanding of alien physiology allowed her to predict the princess's movements in ways that pure combat training couldn't match, creating combinations that were intellectually beautiful to observe. Each combat revealed something new about both human adaptability and Catharian values. The princess tested courage, yes, but also innovation, determination under pressure, and the ability to find strength in apparent weakness. It was Petty Officer Lisa Chang, a communications specialist with no formal combat training, who provided The breakthrough moment that everyone would remember. Chang entered the arena visibly nervous, her standard issue equipment seeming inadequate against the princess's obvious advantages. But when the combat began, she did something none of the previous fighters had attempted. She started talking. "Your Highness," she said, while dodging an elegant blade sweep. "I've been studying your fighting style, and I think I understand what you're really testing for." Princess Zarathek paused mid-attack, clearly intrigued. "Speak, human warrior. You're not trying to defeat us." Chang continued, using the momentary reprieve to adjust her position. "You're trying to understand us. You want to see how humans respond to impossible challenges, how we adapt and innovate. When conventional approaches fail." The princess's golden eyes gleamed with what might have been approval. "Continue. So here's my innovation," Chang said, and then did something that stunned the entire assembly. She deactivated her weapons and sat down in the center of the arena. "I surrender the combat, but I don't yield the challenge." The silence that followed was deafening. Hayes felt her heart stop as she realized that Chang was either making a brilliant strategic move or committing cultural suicide in front of representatives from across the galaxy. Princess Zarathek stood motionless for a long moment, studying the human who had just redefined the terms of their engagement. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a note of genuine amazement. "Explain your reasoning." Warrior. Chang stood up, her nervousness replaced by obvious conviction. "Your Highness, you've been testing whether humans can fight with honor and creativity. I'm demonstrating that we can also think beyond the parameters of a challenge to find unexpected solutions. You wanted to see human warrior spirit. Well, sometimes the most courageous thing a warrior can do is change the nature of the battle itself." The princess was quiet for such a long time that Hayes began to wonder if Chang had miscalculated catastrophically. Around the arena, alien observers murmured among themselves, clearly uncertain how to interpret what they had witnessed. Finally, Princess Zarathek began to laugh. It started as a low chuckle, but grew into rich musical laughter that filled the arena with genuine mirth. When she finally composed herself, she looked at Chang with unmistakable respect. "Brilliant," she said simply. "Absolutely brilliant." She turned to address the entire assembly. "This human has demonstrated the very quality I sought to discover, the ability to see beyond conventional limitations and find victory through understanding rather than force." Hayes stepped forward, sensing that the moment had arrived for command-level intervention. "Princess Zarathek, has our worthiness been proven?" The princess turned those golden eyes on her, and Hayes saw something there that made her breath catch. Approval, yes, but also something deeper. Interest, possibility, more than proven. "Commander Hayes, your species has demonstrated warrior qualities that complement rather than compete with our own traditions. You fight with honor when honor is required, adapt when adaptation is necessary, and think beyond conventional boundaries when innovation is called for." She paused, her gaze sweeping across the assembled humans before returning to Hayes. "But there is one more test I would request, if you are willing." Hayes felt a chill of apprehension. "What kind of test, Your Highness?" Princess Zarathek's smile was enigmatic. "I challenge you, Commander, to a different kind of combat, not of weapons or strength, but of minds. A strategic exercise where we work together rather than against each other." "I don't understand." The void spawn represent a threat unlike any our species have faced individually. But today has shown me that human innovation combined with Kitharian warrior tradition could create something neither of us could achieve alone. The princess gestured to the arena around them. "Let us plan together. Show me how human strategic thinking might complement our approach to warfare." What followed was unlike anything Hayes had experienced in her military career. Working alongside Princess Zarathek, she found herself part of a strategic synthesis that was genuinely revolutionary. The princess's deep understanding of combat dynamics, combined with human tactical flexibility, created Approaches to the void spawn threat that neither species had conceived independently. They worked together for hours, using the arena's holographic systems to model scenarios and test theories. Around them, the alien observers watched with growing amazement as two warrior traditions merged into something entirely new. It was Ambassador Tucker who finally put into words what everyone was witnessing. By the ancient codes, he breathed, they are creating a new form of alliance. Not merely cooperation between species, but genuine integration of strategic philosophies. When they finally concluded their planning session, Princess Zarathik turned to face the assembled crowd. Her voice carried across the arena with unmistakable authority. I declare the right of martial validation, completed and satisfied. Humanity has proven worthy not merely of alliance, but of true partnership. I recommend to the Catharian Empire that we formalize not just trade agreements and mutual defense pacts, but complete strategic integration. The cheers that erupted from the human section of the arena were nearly drowned out by the appreciative battle cries from the Catharian observers. But Hayes found herself focused on Princess Zarathik's expression as the celebration swirled around them. Your Highness, she said quietly, was this really about proving our worthiness? The princess's smile was radiant. Commander Hayes from the moment I heard of Lieutenant Chun's accidental challenge, I knew your species possessed something we needed. Today merely gave me the opportunity to demonstrate that to my people and yours. Hayes glanced over at Marcus, who stood at the edge of the arena looking simultaneously relieved and amazed. So his cultural misunderstanding was actually ... the best possible accident. Princess Zarathik finished. Though I suspect it may not have been entirely accidental. She turned to look directly at Marcus, and Hayes saw him straighten under her gaze. There was something in the princess's expression, a warmth that went beyond diplomatic courtesy. Lieutenant Chun, the princess called out, would you join us? Marcus approached with obvious nervousness, clearly uncertain whether he was about to be commended or challenged to combat himself. Your Highness, he began, I want to apologize again for the cultural misunderstanding. No apologies necessary. She interrupted. In fact, I believe you understood our culture better than you realized. Tell me, when you offered me the greeting of equals, what did you really see? Marcus was quiet for a moment, clearly thinking. I saw someone who commanded respect, who carried herself like a leader, and who looked like she might appreciate directness over diplomatic dancing around. Princess Zarathik's smile was brilliant. Exactly. You saw me as I wished to be seen. Not as protocol demanded you see me. That is a rare gift, Lieutenant. Around them, the formal ceremonies were beginning as representatives from various species stepped forward to witness what was clearly going to be a historic alliance agreement. But Hayes found herself watching the interplay between Marcus and the princess with growing fascination. Your Highness, Marcus said carefully, when you said my greeting was the greeting of equals, did you mean that I was claiming equality with you personally, or with your people? In general? The question drew the attention of Ambassador Tucker, whose skin shifted to more alert colors. An interesting distinction, Lieutenant. In our culture, the personal and political are closely intertwined, especially for royal bloodlines. Princess. Zarathik studied Marcus with those penetrating golden eyes. Which interpretation would you prefer, Lieutenant? The bold question sent ripples through the assembled diplomats, but Marcus didn't hesitate. Personally, Your Highness, I'd be honored by either interpretation. But professionally, I'd hope it means our species can work together as equals. And personally? She pressed, her voice carrying a note that made Hayes wonder if she was witnessing the beginning of something that would complicate diplomatic relations in entirely new ways. Marcus met her gaze steadily. Personally, Your Highness, I think I'd like to learn more about both interpretations. The laugh that escaped Princess Zarathik was warm and genuine. In that case, Lieutenant, perhaps you would join me for a proper meal later. I believe our species have much to learn from each other. As the formal ceremonies continued around them, and the alliance between humanity and the Catharian Empire was officially sealed, Hayes found herself marveling at the unexpected turns the day had taken. What had started as a catastrophic diplomatic crisis had become not just a strategic victory, but possibly the beginning of connections between their species that went far beyond political necessities. Princess Zarathik had gotten what she wanted: proof that humans could be worthy partners in both war and peace. Humanity had gained one of the galaxy's most powerful allies in the fight against the Void Spawn, and Lieutenant Marcus Chen had apparently started something with a warrior princess that would either be the greatest diplomatic success story in Alliance history or a complication that would keep xenosociologists busy for decades. As the sun set over Nexus Station and the celebration continued into the evening, Hayes reflected that sometimes the most important victories came from the most unexpected beginnings. All because a nervous lieutenant had said good morning to the right person at exactly the right moment, in exactly the right way. The war against the Void Spawn would continue, but now they would face it with allies who understood that true strength came not from fighting alone, but from finding ways to fight together that were greater than the sum of their parts. And somewhere in the midst of the celebration, Princess Zarathik and Lieutenant Chen were discovering that the most interesting alliances were often the most personal ones. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.